Hello and welcome to Colleague 7 Sprint Review for 18.11.01. This will cover the work undertaken between the 30th of October to the 12th of November. Starting with our sprint goal, and for this sprint our aim has been to finalise and launch the initial version of our API to handle candidate creation with document upload, and also to look to deliver the first phase of our enhanced template management solution. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint we've been able to launch the initial version of our Colleague 7 API. This has been developed over the last couple of sprints and initially will handle candidate creation with document upload. So Colleague 7 can accommodate the registration of a candidate via a third-party website as well as an alternative CV parser. Following our last sprint, we've begun work on our new template management solution. This work will span the next sprint before being complete, but I'll offer a demo on where we've got up to with this. We've added the ability to post to Broadbean from a requirement. This is the first phase of a number of integration dev items in relation to Broadbean. Further updates will seek to offer updates on applications and eventually a full 360 model where applications are passed into Colleague as applications. We've updated the way ownership is assigned to requirements. This is further to significant demand for there to be a way of assigning multiple users against a requirement rather than only having the worked by field. This will now work the same as it does against a candidate, a company and a contact record. We've updated the task list so that this appears differently. This now shows the entity type and the associated company to any linked contact records. I'll demonstrate what I mean by this shortly. Onto some bug fixing, and we've addressed an error when registering a candidate via the CV parser. This is what happens when no name has been populated and the known as field is copied across from the forename. There was a bug relating to that which we've resolved. We've also resolved an issue which resulted in histories being filtered out of the contact history tab when they've been created via the markers lever process. And we've introduced a new document indexed option so that users can decide if a document is to be included in text searching. This affects several areas, so I'll go through what I mean by this. We'll now go through a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so there's quite a few things to go through as part of this sprint review, but we'll start with the first thing from the agenda, and it's also one of the key items from the sprint goal, and that's the launch of Colleague 7's API. So our API has been on the agenda for a considerable part of this year in terms of something that we wanted to launch before the end of the year. But we're now here in terms of having an initial version, which is to say that there are two specific calls that can be made via the API, and we plan on now building on that call list so that there can be multiple different types of calls that can be made to a Colleague 7 system to be the provide data or to insert data into the system from a third-party source. But to just explain how this has been set up, we've implemented our API using the Microsoft Azure API management service. So it comes with the logging process, the subscription key process, and all of the security that comes with implementing that framework. So we're quite confident in the framework model that we've implemented this API against, and we can now just build on it from here. But from a developer's perspective, on requesting access to the API, they will be given access to this URL. We may also stick this URL on our website shortly or over time. But yeah, essentially they'll be able to access this area. From here they would sign up, giving us obviously their contact information and a purpose for why they are requesting access to the API. On the basis of them clarifying the client that they're working with, we will contact you directly, essentially seeking authorization from you that it is acceptable for the developer to gain access to the API. And on receipt of your confirmation, which we'll have in writing, we'll then grant access to the API for that developer with a subscription key. And from there, they'll be able to log into this portal. They'll be able to go to our API area, and then from here you can see the different API calls that are available to the developers. Currently, one is for the creation of a candidate record, and the other one is a upload of document to that candidate record. And with these API calls, it comes with a sample copy of the schema in relation to the candidate record that's included as part of the call, and also the sample code for the actual integration itself that the developer would implement in the various different languages that they may choose to implement it with. Fairly comfortable with the framework and implementation of the API. Obviously, mindful that the current API only has these two options. We will build on it over the course of next year, but that's currently where things stand with regards to Colleague 7's API. If you have any queries with regards to the API, then please either contact me or the support team regarding it, and we'll clarify things there. But that's where we are as of now. So the next point to cover relates to the uploading of a template, and that template being in Word format. So this is really the first phase of a two-part piece of work that's been undertaken over the last sprint and will now be completed in the coming sprint. But this is basically a demonstration on where we're up to, as we have essentially delivered the admin element of the functionality. What's left to do now is the functionality to work with that template when you're creating a document from the record. So what you'll be able to do moving forwards, this has come about because essentially users were finding it difficult when using the inbuilt HTML editor mechanism. They were finding it difficult to essentially recreate the templates that they wanted to create from within this user interface. It was expected and a lot easier to build your template within Microsoft Word, and then they would want to upload that Microsoft Word template and essentially have all the formatting retained. So we've obviously still got the new template option here still available. You could still create letter templates and email templates as you would do within this area, but there is now also an upload template option. And from here on selecting upload template, you're given the option to obviously it's for document templates that we're doing this for, but you're given the option to specify the scope, and you're then obviously given the option to upload the template. Before I do this, if I just demonstrate how this would work from a merge code perspective. So as our example document here, obviously the formatting of the document is essentially it's not going to be looking to convert anything in this document in relation to the formatting. What it's looking for is the merge fields when you're uploading it. So what we've done is we've essentially built in a process that will seek to find merge fields in the document based on a format. And that format is that you have two square brackets as an opening, the entity name or the scope name, and then the field name off the back of it, and then two closing square brackets. And we've created in the help file, we've created a merge fields directory, just so that you have an overview here, and these are all the merge fields that you can use within that format. And then what that means is that you can obviously edit this template or edit this document as you need to before uploading it into 7, and then that upload process will convert to create the merge fields that you need them to be moving forwards from then on. It's just so that that way you can avoid editing the template actually within that portal, so you can assign merge codes in that way. So just to demonstrate how this would work, you'll see here that I've got essentially 4 valid merge fields in terms of it being the scope name of candidate and then the associated field name afterwards. And then I've purposely put in a kind of a badge merge field ID here just to demonstrate that it has some validation as part of that process. If I close that down and we then go back to that template list here, I'll choose the file that I was just looking at there. And then if we just put a name here, save that template, and then what's happened is you can see here failed to transform the following merge fields, following merge codes, and it's listed that specific merge code that was essentially incorrect listed in the document. So what you can now do is view different merge or different templates based on whether or not they've been created within the UI or uploaded after being created in Word. So templates that have been created within the UI will be referred to under the file type of web, and then templates that have been uploaded will have a file type of uploaded. And then you can obviously switch to view those uploaded fields from this option here as to assist you with that. Now, if you see, we've obviously got, this is our template that we've just uploaded. If I select that template, you can see it will load there. And then what it demonstrates or displays is a preview. This is the same preview that's used throughout the system. It's demonstrating a kind of HTML version of that file. It's not the actual format of the file, it's a HTML display of the what the document contains. If you want to actually look at what the actual document contains in terms of its formatting, you can then edit the template. We'll set yes to that, and then it will open up Word as it does when you're editing a Word document throughout the system. And then from within here, you're actually looking at the template itself. And obviously, you can then edit it on Word Online or edit it in Word as a local application. So if we edit it in the browser, just to demonstrate the edit. And obviously, because it's in Word Online, it's saved automatically. So when we're done with this, we can just close it. And then within here, when we hit refresh, those changes have then come through, demonstration of edit in there. But as I say, the preview is a HTML equivalent of the document. It's not the actual document formatting. From that, if you want to look at the actual document, you have to edit the template to then be brought through into Word so that you can edit it as you see fit. And that's how we've been able to retain the formatting of a Word document, and how that you'll be able to work with Word documents moving forwards in terms of them being your template mechanism when you're working within Colleague 7. So this is step one in terms of getting it within the admin area. Step two is obviously updating the candidate letter, or sorry, the letter creation or create document process that's available from the various different entity records throughout the system, so that they can call on these Word document style templates and obviously create the necessary document, again retaining all of the formatting as expected. And I'll obviously demonstrate all that functionality when that's available. But that's an update of where we are there. The next point to cover is the option to post to Broadbean from a requirement. So this is the first of a series of integration pieces that we've got with Broadbean, so that you can go about having vacancies posted to Broadbean, but also applications and adverts monitored from within Colleague 7, and then applications from candidates coming back into 7. But as step one is the option to post to Broadbean. Just to start within the admin area, the first point to note is that there is a user group permission to the Broadbean access. So for users that have access to this option, and that's available here, enable post to Broadbean. Providing you have access, then you'll be able to see or be able to click on the associated Broadbean icon. There's another element to cover, and that's within user settings and the integrations. You'll have the Broadbean username and also the Broadbean password, and those will be stored here. And also here you'll have the notes section that should be posted to Broadbean as the job description. And if it's blank, it will default to the first note. But if it specifies anything of the 5 note tabs available, then that will be the note tab that is posted to Broadbean. But on selection of or going into a requirement, what you'll see now is there's this option here for post to Broadbean. Now, if you don't have any user details for Broadbean and it's done at a user level for Broadbean, then when you click on post to Broadbean, it's going to bring up an alert which advises that you need to enter in your user details against your user settings. But because we have those details in place, it basically advises that this is going to open a new tab, log you into Broadbean and load your requirement details into the job posting process. You can obviously set no or yes, and on hitting yes, it opens up a new tab, and then it pulls through that information into that tab so that you are logged into the Add Courier portal for Broadbean. You can then select the various different job boards that you have associated with your account with Broadbean. Obviously, we've just got a test board here for this trial account. And on hitting continue, you'll see that your details have been pulled across from the requirement and into the Broadbean portal. What won't be included is the location and also the industry type or industry sector. Those two are elements that you'll need to update yourself because they have their own internal architecture with regards to the sectors they use and the way that they store their locations. So you'll need to update those elements, but when on completion of those, you'll then be able to continue forward and post out the advert so that you obviously can avoid the replication and duplication of having to copy all that information from the requirement over to Broadbean. As part of posting that information over to Broadbean, a history record is created, just containing, obviously there's been multiple tests of this against this record, but essentially the information that you posted will be contained within that history log that's raised against the requirement. So that's the update that we've made so far. We have essentially intentions to add an additional tab here that will go about tracking the responses to adverts sent out through Broadbean and obviously tracking in those applications as well longer term. I even say even longer term, it's kind of early into next quarter. We're looking to have all those features kind of implemented. But this is the first phase so far. So that's the update we've made as part of this sprint. Staying with the requirement record, the next point to cover is the ownership of a requirement. So previously, ownership of a requirement was assigned by a worked by field that would exist next to the picked up by field here. The picked up field being the actual user record that created the requirement, but worked by often being the either the resourcer or the recruiter or a batch of people that essentially are looking to work against the requirement, and that was essentially the issue. There was very much a request made by multiple clients for there to be the ability to assign multiple ownership rather than one individual user associated to a requirement. So what we've done now is we've implemented ownership against a requirement. So just as it works against the candidate's company and contact record, it also has now been implemented against requirements. So you have the ability to assign multiple owners against a requirement within here, and that's where the worked by field has gone. Essentially, the worked by field is not there, and it's now been moved in here. And as part of this being implemented, obviously scripts we run across your systems to ensure that the ownership of the record is transferred into this area from the worked by field data previously held. And that's essentially the key update that's been made. As part of doing that, it's meant updating the requirement selection screen, so it's searching on ownership rather than that work by field. We've had to update some of the reports, the KPI dials, the team overview, all on the basis of now looking at a different type of ownership mechanism against a requirement rather than that singular field. But it's a key update that has been required for some time, and which it's great to see it in there finally. So that's one of the key updates, and again, we've made as part of this sprint. The next point to cover, and it's sort of a minor update that was made in the tasks area, and that's just relation to how we've now reorganized the columns and just made it a little bit clearer relating to the associated entity to the task. So before the associated record or the link record to the task was kind of docked on the right hand side here, a little bit out of the way, not always very apparent to the user which sort of entity type was associated with the task, and all round just not consistent with how we've laid out records or listed records within the system. We often have the entity type name listed on the left hand side there, followed by the name of the record. So the tasks area has had a bit of an update in relation to that. You can obviously filter and sort the tasks based on their association with entity as you could before. Tasks obviously aren't solely limited to tasks that you've created within Colleague. Obviously, if you create a task outside of Colleague within Outlook, they're still going to be pulled through into here because this is using the Office 365 API calling to list all tasks associated to your account. But if you didn't create the task within Colleague, you're not going to have a linked record associated to it. So that's the difference between these records versus these ones. But essentially, that's the update that we've made in the tasks area. The last point to cover relates to the document index option that's been added now to essentially all the areas in the system where you've got the option to upload a document to Colleague 7. So starting within the search, just to explain what I mean by document index. So this is the when you're doing a text criteria search against a candidate search, you'll notice that there is an option for CVs. There's chances are there's probably one index in place on your system for all CVs or CVs, and that's the index that is being searched against when you're doing a text criteria search. But it is possible to request for there to be multiple different indexes. So if you wanted to segregate up your documents so that some documents were searchable in a certain context, whereas other documents need to be searchable in another, that's the type of scenario that we're talking about here. And what we've previously only had is a index option against the candidate record. What is now possible is for there to be a company. There's going to be a company index, a contact index, a requirement index for documents relating to those different entity types. But in terms of how that visibly changes things on the record, if I go to a candidate record here and go to documents, what you'll now see when you're selecting essentially any document, what you'll see is a document index option, and that will list the different indexes that you have as an option. Obviously, you've got all CVs, CVs, past CVs, and if I go back to the search quickly, you've got all CVs, CVs, and past CVs. And essentially what it's asking is which document index, with not to be multiple or single, do you want this document to be associated to? And what you can do is have essentially documents associated to that index or not, as you see fit. And you can also have default indexes assigned against different document types. So to explain what I mean by that, when you if you go into admin, under lookups and under document types, if you select a document type, you'll have an option here for default index, and then you can from here select a default index, with that be an index relating to a candidate record or indeed the company, the contact, or the requirement. And then if that document index is or document type is chosen, then it's going to assume you want it to go into that document index to be searchable. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, when you're, if you're adding a document, say, you're going to see when you're adding a document that it's going to look for you to specify the index. Again, if you select a certain index where there's a default assigned, you see how it changed there to CVs. As soon as you select default CV, it will do it automatically, providing you have those defaults in place. And when we are updating and upgrading you, we'll ensure that your default document type for parsing is obviously assigned, so that there's no impact in relation to this feature. It's just something that you can utilize and enhance moving forwards. There is also a default on parsing item as well, for specifying which document type is to be used for when parsing a record. So there's sort of multiple options being offered here. Going to a CV parse, just as an example. So if you were parsing a document and you wanted to attach that document, again, you'll see here that that document index option has been added there. If you were updating a existing record, and again, you've got attached document here, again, you see that parse option is available there. So it's basically been added in all the areas where it's possible to upload a document to. Same from documents received as well, you'll see that same option being available there. Essentially where you've got the option to upload a document to the system, you'll have the option to specify which document index is going to be associated with that document. So that's an update that we've made there to strengthen the document searching options that you have available to you in the system, and also just moving on from that, having the concept of there being multiple indexes as well is something that obviously we're looking to introduce, so that it gives more scope for checking over different document types, which is a requirement we've seen many times before. So that's the update we've made there. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 18.11.02, and that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.